Well, God bless you one and all, and welcome back to the Bishop's Corner. And of course, my name is Bishop Dr. Herbert N. Scott, the Chief Prelate of the Liberty Hall, Cathedral of Praise, right here in the heart of Brooklyn. Welcome to the Bishop's Corner. Certainly, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And we also want to thank God for the man of God himself, the real Dr. Phil, and he happens to be the visionary of the Bishop's Corner. And certainly tonight we are thanking God for the panel that we do have tonight. We thank God for the man of God himself, the Apostle Lucien Rojas, that is with us. Can we make him feel welcome? God bless you, man of God. Certainly a pleasure to have you tonight on the Bishop's Corner. We want to thank God for the man of God all the way from up north. Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston is with us. Let's make him feel welcome. Always a pleasure, man of God, to have you indeed on the Bishop's Corner. Next, we want to thank God for a wonderful man of God that's doing a tremendous job in Brooklyn, Pastor Richard McKenzie Jr. Thank you for weighing in, man of God. Certainly a pleasure. And we want to thank God for a young man that God has blessed tremendously. And we are so happy to have him with us tonight, Andrew Wolliston. Thank you very much, Andrew, for weighing in tonight. Now, I left the two archangels or angels for last because they are the ones tonight that will be definitely speaking to us. Okay, we thank God for the lovely Dr. Dolores Ben that is with us tonight. Always indeed a pleasure, young lady, to have you on the Bishop's Corner. Last but not least, we want to thank God for a young lady that God has blessed tremendously. She hails from Puerto Rico. Wonderful place, a place that I love, a place that I went for my honeymoon. And that is none other than Pastor Lucy Pagan. Pastor Pagan, definitely, it's a pleasure to have you. Well, we have a very interesting program for you tonight. Okay, Thursday, the 23rd of June. Our subject matter is the gospel truth, part 1, Roe versus Wade. And the questions for our consideration, let me just read 2 questions. Question number 1. What's driving the number of abortions in the United States? Question number 2. What should be the Christian perspective on abortion and the reversal of the Roe versus Wade ruling? Okay, now we know that abortion has been with us since 1550, and it was started by the Egyptians and so forth. Now, the first question for our consideration is this: what's driving the number of abortions in America? We looked at the statistics and we are told that from 2010, it started to come down. But once it hit 2017, we see the reversal. It's now climbing. And we want to see if we can get to the bottom of this. So the first question for our consideration is, what's driving the number of abortions up in America? And we'll want to ask at this time our Dr. Dolores Ben just to weigh on in. And if anyone has the answers, I'm sure she definitely does. Dr. Ben, how say you, woman of God?
Oh, I greet everyone this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to be here just to rehearse this topic of abortion. What's driving the numbers up? That answer spans the gamut. We can sit and look at various statistical data, and we could look at various emotional or humanistic situations that occur that's driving the numbers up. The biggest thing that I've seen, even in doing research, is finances. What had happened, a lot of money back in 2017 had been removed from systems that would allow the poor and the needy to have abortions. So therefore, they did not, and they could not afford an abortion. What's happening now? These systems have just been refunded. So it's almost like an influx. It makes available most of these clinics abortions for the poor and the indigent, that indigenous population that uses that service. People have abortions for varying reasons. And it's so sad to believe that abortion, they use abortion as a form of contraceptive. And this can be another reason why the numbers are going up. Promiscuity has increased. And as these women get pregnant, because of the ease with which they can have an abortion, they tend to use it because it's safe, it's a clinic, and it's done under sterile conditions. So these women will have 2 and 3 and 4 abortions without even consideration that it's a life. So you have varying reasons. And that's what I'll start with, why abortions are increasing.
Okay, thank you very, very much. This time we'll be asking our Pastor Lucy Pagan to weigh on in. Same question, what's driving the number of abortions in America?
Well, Dr. Ben took a lot of the words out of my mouth. But even, I've dealt with a lot of younger people, and it's the same thing you said, Dr. Ben. It's the ease of it, the access of it. Now even you can take your underage child to the pediatrician, and if they're sexually active, you're not even allowed to know that, even though they're underage and you're the parent. They're given birth control. They're being they're being treated for STDs, and the parents left completely out of the whole conversation, the whole exam, so forth. So as much as the government wants to quote unquote end Roe v. Wade, but it also has a lot to do with the amount of abortions we have going on in the country as well. The government's gotten so involved in, family values. They've gotten so involved in, controlling beliefs and disseminating so much information within the schools and limiting the parents to get involved and create that structure and discipline, and having those conversations that would probably help these children to avoid these mistakes. They've gotten in the way of that, and they've taken away our ability to be able to counsel a lot of these young people. But I will agree with Dr. Ben. It's the accessibility. It's also, you look at the culture now, you look at music, you look at clothing, you look at everything points to promiscuity. So, I mean, it's bound to happen. And unfortunately, this generation is not like the generation where we grew up at, where we weren't just reactive. We had people that instilled values in us that held us accountable. Now, these children just go and do what they want to do, regardless of what you tell them. I mean, we can go on and name 1,000,001 reasons why it's rising. But there is a lot going on, especially with this generation, and the difference from when we were raised to what it is now, that's actually made abortions go up. And a lot of them have looked at it as a backfall. I mean, I met one girl where she had 4 abortions and didn't even think twice about it. And, I think at that point, it becomes an abuse. It becomes an abuse of what it can actually serve for other women that maybe have a life-threatening issue. But there's so many reasons why, the culture, the generation, the times, finances, there's so many reasons. And I mean, it would be hard to touch on all of them in one night.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Ben and Lucy Pagan, let me ask you a question. When a woman gets an abortion, do you think, and I'm asking you this because you both are a woman, okay, does it weigh on her conscience? Or maybe it depends on who it is and the relationship that they have with the good Lord, but does it really weigh on a woman's conscience?
I honestly believe it does.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to quite a few women who have had abortions, and to this day they live in regret, wondering what would my son have been like? What would my daughter have been like? I wish someone had spoken to me and given me other choices. And these are people I have actually encountered, given me different advice. My life might have been different today. When I was pregnant, I was young, I was afraid, I was scared. I didn't know which way to turn. And the counselor told me that I can just have an abortion and get rid of it. So I did that. But today, when I'm more mature and I can look back, I wish I had a different choice, or I'd made a different choice. And that's just some of the experiences I've had. I also believe that some people, based on the reason that they're using abortion, they have no regret. A young woman who sees an abortion as contraceptives doesn't have any regret. It's just that, well, I got pregnant, I don't want it, and they don't consider it a life. That's not where their minds are. They think it's unwanted, it's an inconvenience, and I'm getting rid of it, as though you were just flushing something down the toilet. And that mindset is very disturbing, but it is very prevalent also today. What are your thoughts, Lucy?
Same thing. You know, I've actually encountered the young lady I mentioned a few minutes ago, where she had 4 abortions back to back. She was just using it as a fallback, because, you know, she was just one of those women that was living la vida loca, and she did not really care about it. But I've also encountered women, the same thing. There's different scenarios. I've encountered women where they were young, they didn't know what to do. Same thing, no counsel, no guidance, no support. You know, you see the people outside the clinics, don't do it, you know, abortion's this, abortion's that, but then they also don't offer a solution once the person decides not to abort. And even when it comes to, let's say, someone with a life-threatening illness or so forth, when it comes to being pregnant, I've known a couple of women actually that had to abort their child because, number one, they were mothers, wives, they had other children. And if they would not terminate the pregnancy, not only would, the child not survive, but they wouldn't survive. And they had to make the decision on, do I continue to hope and have faith that this might work, or do, and then lose my life and my children, don't have me anymore, my husband don't have me anymore, or do I terminate and, have to live with this decision? So yes, it has a huge effect on a woman's psyche. When a woman gets pregnant, okay, so both of my children were surprises. They were great surprises. I was married, it was allowed, it was great. They were both great surprises. But as soon as I found out that I was pregnant, it was an instant connection, emotional connection, heart to heart, soul to soul, spirit to spirit with my child. The moment that, I found out that I was pregnant. And even with my daughter, we had a scare that, I thought I had miscarried her, where, I had severe bleeding, I had to be rushed to the hospital. And it felt like I had lost my child, based on, the doctor's view. So even though that wasn't an abortion, a miscarriage, is the same thing. You're losing a child. It really does a number on a woman's psyche, especially when they connect to that child. Bishop, you were talking earlier about it must be wonderful where you can feel life inside of you. And it is, you can feel the movement. I could feel my daughter hiccuping, I can see her in the sonogram sucking her finger, all of these things. And then as a believer, you think about life and creation and how God, gave us the ability to be able to have this womb that gives life and incubates life. So yes, it definitely has an effect on the psyche. I can only imagine women that maybe have been raped, Dr. Ben, to your point that there are some scenarios where women just psychologically cannot, carry this child through because of one reason or another. But nonetheless, and I want to believe that people do have, souls, and some of these women that might use it as a contraceptive, eventually when they do have children that they want to, I can imagine that it still has somewhat of an effect on them, even though they might not describe it, but it can be very detrimental to a woman.
Okay, before we should go over to the men, I have not forgotten them, but let me just ask you two ladies one more question. What do you think of the term, it's my body, it's my choice? It's my body, it's my choice.
First of all,
Ben, you go
an
first.
incorrect statement. You're not your own. You belong to God. It's not your body. Even though God gave man the power of the choice, you belong to God. The ability to bear a child is a gift from God. I reflect on Jeremiah 1:5. It said, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Think about it. If I say this is my body, my choice, I don't know what's in my womb. I don't know what I'm carrying. I have to believe that I belong to God, and God in his wisdom entrust me to carry the seed of my husband, to allow his seed and mine to connect so that we can have an offspring that belongs to God. In all thy ways, acknowledge him. I know that's a little out of context, Bishop, but we belong to God. We are not independent creatures. We depend on God. So regardless how you look at it, my body, my choice, I perceive as a humanistic philosophy. And sometimes we bring these concepts and constructs into the church, and it's not aligned with the word of God.
Okay. Pastor Pagan?
Oh, that's another loaded question. I agree with Dr. Ben. Our bodies are temples, and we have to be wise on what we do and so forth. And some women, they do not take care of their temples, and others do. My feeling is, depending on the situation and so forth, there's some people that use that kind of as an excuse to justify their actions. This is my body, I'll do with what I want with it and all of that. Yes, but now you're not just dealing with your own body. Now you're dealing with someone else's body, even though you don't see it yet, even though maybe it hasn't grown to a certain level yet. But as Dr. Ben said, you are dealing with another life. Once it has a heartbeat, they want to say, oh, well, at this point, it's not really, this is not, I'm sorry, but once that seed enters that egg, and it is, instead that life is created, that connection is made, the spirit's released, now it's just growing, it's going through that incubation period. There is no difference. I don't have to see it form for me to know that it's life. I found out I was pregnant when I was only 2 weeks. There was probably just membranes and a heartbeat, but that was still my child. I knew that it was a living being. It was a spirit. I knew that it was going to grow, to be something wonderful. So I sometimes feel like this whole, it's my body thing can be an excuse, but I do also understand why some people say that, because in my mind, I also don't like the fact that you have, government institutions and all that, they want to control every aspect of everything, especially when, they want to say that they're the Christian party. And in my mind, I'm like, you guys talk all this about, oh, we're pro-life and all this other stuff, when a woman is pregnant, we're talking about abortion, but these are the same people that aren't pro-life outside of the womb. So, you guys want to proclaim that we're pro-life about, all of this and all that, but then what about the life outside the womb? An African-American man in the womb, you know what I mean? What about his life outside of the womb? So, I have an issue with the hypocritical factor of the government and people that don't understand the women body, especially when it comes to special circumstances, dictating or deciding something for me. So it is a little bit, for me, it's twofold. Now, I'm a believer. I am completely pro-life inside the womb and outside the womb. But I do have an issue with, government and certain people making certain decisions, when it comes to, the human body. So that some people might disagree, but I'm kind of split on that one.
I hear you, Pastor.
Bishop, if you don't mind me chiming in, I totally agree with Dr. Bed and Pastor Lucy. But for those that will make the statement, my body, my choice, in a sense, it's hypocritical, and they are hypocrites, really, when you think about it. Because here's the fact of the matter. Early in the pandemic, when they were given the option to take the vaccine or lose their job, how many people cried out, my body, my choice, at the risk of losing their employment, putting food on their table? What did they do? Especially if you work for the federal government or you're in healthcare or whatever it was. Oh, they opposed, but they readily went and got the jab. Because guess what? It was convenient for them. Even though they were probably against it, but you didn't hear about yes, some, but not the majority. You didn't hear about my body, my choice. I'm not taking this vaccine. No, it's either you do or you don't eat. So to make that statement, I think is very hypocritical when it comes on to the unborn child, my body, my life. Okay, take the vaccine. Okay, I'm gonna take it because I'm gonna lose my job and lose my house and lose everything. So come on, what are we talking about here?
Amen. Okay, at this time we'll be asking the apostle, man of God, what's driving the number of abortion in the United States?
Unmute.
Yes, sorry about that. So good to be on tonight again. And we had a wonderful time on last week. I really enjoyed the program last week, and looking forward to this subject tonight. It's a really tense subject. People are sharply divided and very passionate about this subject, whether they're for or against. And so and this people take it very, very serious to the next level, that people will stand up in arms at an abortion clinic and try to kill a doctor, or they would take it so far. And so people do disagree on this subject. We speaking here tonight from a Christian standpoint, and for most of us, I can speak for myself, we are pro-life. We believe that life starts the conception from in the womb. But the driving force, what's driving it? And maybe this is not one of my pet subjects, or I'm not very versed in this field and subject, and in terms of stats and so forth and so on, and all the medical terms and so forth. I assure there are people who could do a better job than I can. But what's driving it? One of the things, though, it is said that a poll was taken, and that Christianity has been on the decline in the United States of America for the past decade or so. It has gone from 78 to 70%. We are becoming very secularized and scientific, and I'm not against that, but it seemed like God has been not as what this country was built upon in terms of and to compound that, even with the COVID and the pandemic, as a pastor myself, some of the people that were attending church haven't come back since, and I wonder if they ever will. And so Christianity has been taking a blow, and compound that with the evangelical and the hypocrisy with the trying to overturn the election and people's vote and all of that. But so we see like there's a godless community that we are living in. The Bible said righteousness shall exalt a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. So coming back to the point, what's driving it? Because for the past decade, it was on the decline, and now it's on the rise. And there were financial problems before that, and people were living promiscuous before that. So what really causes it? Maybe a less fear for God. I know for a fact that people would have kids even though things were more tough back in the early. For example, I grew up in the village in the island, and I was born in '60, and I can attest to the neighbors around us had 14 children, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm speaking the truth, who had 16 and 15, and having 8. My mother had 8 children, she had 2 miscarriages, she would have had 10. That's a normal family. Today, the average person won't have 2 kids. I mean, some folks just want to have 1. They don't want to have 2. They don't want the morning sickness and the burden of carrying a child. And so today's people, they are, in terms of being patient, in terms of wanting things instant, folks who just want the hassle of pregnancy, I guess, and that could be a factor in driving that up. But I'm sure there are more valid reasons that I'm probably not aware of, but it's on the rise, and there must be a reason for that.
Okay, thank you, man of God. Okay, at this time, we'll be asking Bishop Dr. Neville Wolliston to weigh on in. Same question, sir.
Yeah, bless you, Bishop. Good to be back on the panel again, and to all the panelists and the guests. And I just want to give a special shout out and appreciation to the real Dr. Phil. The real Dr. Phil. We celebrate him. We celebrate his accomplishment, his achievement. And I was so happy to be a part of that, because Bishop, at the end of the day, if we don't celebrate our own, who will? So we truly celebrate him. Yeah, that's a great question, Bishop. And as the former, our guest and panelists mentioned, it's a touching, tricky subject. But that's what I like about the Bishop's Corner. We're asking the hard questions. We're asking the questions that, no one really wants to answer or even tackle, or we can even ask from behind the pulpit. And I agree totally with all the past speakers, Apostle, Dr. Ben, and Pastor Lucy. I think it was Dr. Ben who alluded to the fact that 2 of the primary, not the only reasons, are the use or the easy access of contraceptive and financial situations that are driving the numbers that are going sky high. But I think at some point, Bishop, we have to look at this issue from a moral perspective, not just from a cultural or my body, my choice kind of thing, or even like the evangelicals, that's all they want to do is just stop killing the unborn. And of course, we all agree that that should be stopped. In other words, what I'm saying is we shouldn't just concentrate on outlawing this heinous crime, and we believe that it is an heinous crime, but we should also put our energies and monies on teaching morals, abstinence, and take seriously the 7th commandment that says, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, and we can say / fornication. But here's the problem. We focus on the 7th commandment, but very rarely do we talk about the 6th commandment, which said, thou shalt not commit murder. I'm sorry, we focus on the 6th and not the 7th. The 6th says, thou shalt not commit murder, and we know that to be true. But the 7th also say, look, fornication, adultery, this is something that we should not even be named among us. But again, the focus, real Bishop, is what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the root, or are we dealing with the fruit? And I think if evangelicals will look at this abortion issue from a serious point of view, perspective, they will begin to examine and address the cause. Why? The research has shown that at least 60 million babies have been killed or aborted since the law went into effect. 60 million. Yes, it's a heinous crime and we must address it. And I like the question tonight. What's driving it? What's behind all of that? I was doing a little bit of checking in 2019, Bishop, according to the CDC, here's this: unmarried women were accountable for 86% of all abortions.
Wow.
Unmarried women. Among married women, 4% of pregnancies ended in the abortion. Unmarried women, 86%. Married women, 4%. So, Bishop, what I'm trying to say is that we have to, at some point, look at the bigger picture. Is abortion the bigger picture here? No, let's be clear. We're not condoning that kind of behavior or the taking of a human life, whether, as Pastor Lucien says, in or out of the womb. But maybe it's time for us to address the behavior that bring us to this point, why we're asking the question, what's driving the behavior? What's driving it? That's leading to the abortion in the first place. Bishop, it's kind of like, we're all church pastors and, I'm given a prophecy about what have you, a house, a car, but then I'm going to hell. Nobody's addressing the fact that my soul isn't saved. I have not committed my life to Christ, but whoopee, I'm getting a house, I'm getting a car. I mean, what's the bigger picture here? Should it not be the fact that I need Jesus? And I'm not against prophecies or nothing like that, just trying to make a point. So very quickly, in the 60s, we have, obviously, as we know, the sexual revolution and the rise of unwanted pregnancies. And of course, there were various methods of birth control and so forth and so on. But what happened was abortion became the desired solution. So rather than curb the rampant sexual immorality, the country began to cry out for an abortion solution. Instead of, let's deal with this, what is causing the rise. No, we want a solution. We want a solution. And of course, here we go, my body, my choice. So I think what we need is not just a change in the law, Roe versus Wade, but we also need a change in morals, a change in social behavior. Frankly, I think we should go back to upholding biblical standards, moral standards, if we consider ourselves to be a Christian nation, as the apostle just mentioned. And really the question now becomes, are we really a Christian nation? Are we really one who believe in the 10 commandments, all the commandments? The 7th commandment is just as important as the 6 commandments. So there's a lot of variables. There are a lot of things that are driving, but I would say, Bishop, we have to examine the root cause and not just the fruit. And for the evangelicals, it's always the fruit. Why? Let's stop the killing. Let's stop the killing. And yes, we should. What's causing it? What's driving it? We need to go back to biblical principles and biblical standards so that God can be pleased with what we do and as a nation.
I like what you're saying, man of God. Let me ask you a question as an experienced man of God. Now, if a young lady came to you and said, Bishop Wolliston, I am really, really thinking about having an abortion, what would you tell us, sir?
Bishop, I've had those situations before. And by God's grace, I was able, because a lot of times it's shame, especially if, well, most of the times it's unmarried. It's shame in how the church is going to respond. And I'll be the first to admit,
yes,
maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would not have handled it, especially if it's a Christian young lady. Because again, the model, not blaming the model, but that's just how we were taught to do things. But I've had the privilege to at least speak into their lives and to allow them to know that, look, it's not the end of the world. God's going to be with you. You can go through this. And here's the thing about abortion, Bishop. The killing, it's not so much the killing of a child. It's the killing of destiny. It's the killing of purpose. It's the killing of far more than just a physical being. That could be a Moses. That could be a Nelson Mandela. That could be a Jeremiah. And so then it's not just taking a life. It's a destiny. It's a purpose. And that's what the devil don't want us to see.
destiny, purpose. And that's exactly what the devil does not want us to see. I would like to put that same question to one of the ladies. I'm not sure if either of them or both of them would like to answer. A woman came to you saying that she's considering having an abortion.
Unmute.
Praise the Lord. Wow, that is a very difficult question or scenario to be put into. As a healthcare professional, my first question to her would be, why? What is the reason that you would like an abortion? And many times, as Bishop Wolliston said, it's shame. It's, I don't have the finances to support this child. And I would sit and work with this young woman to look at various options, because today you've got options. And if I feel I don't have the adequate resources, I would refer her to an appropriate social worker where she can have the child and give it up for adoption. The list of people waiting to adopt a viable baby is so long. You can have the child, give it up so that the child can have, I love how Bishop Wolliston said this, destiny and purpose. And the destiny and purpose may not be perpetrated by you, but it can be somebody else who is able to. I would counsel that young woman to let her know that whatever the reason is, you have got options, and that an abortion is not the end all to solving your solution. The reason being, I would be very conflicted with that, because as a child of God, I'm pro-life. I don't believe in the taking of a child, except in the position where a woman's life is in danger. And that in itself is an ethical dilemma. Which one do you allow to live? With much prayer, you ask God for guidance. And that's why it's something that you will have to deal with outside the confines of your belief. Hence the reason I would counsel, I would give other options, and where necessary, give referrals to help that young woman.
Dr. Ben, can I ask you a question?
Sure, sir.
You've been in the medical profession for a while. I imagine you're now retired. My question is, did you see yourself as a Christian first, or a medical professional first, or both?
I saw myself as a Christian first. I'm a Christian who's practicing, right? So whatever I did, whoever I minister to or counsel with or serve, as a healthcare professional, I did it from the standpoint of a child of God, using the knowledge that God allowed me to have to take care of you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, this time we'll be asking Pastor Richard McKenzie to weigh on in. What's driving the number of abortions in America?
First and foremost, blessings to you, Bishop, and to the panel. God bless you. It's been a couple of weeks, amen, but I'm happy to be back with every one of us. As we all said, this is a very touchy topic, one that is not covered many times because of the touchiness of it. But the question is, what's driving the number of abortions in America? First thing I want to look at is, what are some of the causes for abortion? This is some. Obviously, there's many. But some of the causes are that it can, or a pregnancy, I should say, can interfere with one's employment, and some ladies don't know how to balance the two. They don't want to lose their job. They don't want to have to be out of work. So they said, you know what, maybe this is the better option. Some, it can interfere with education. There are a lot of young ladies that are getting pregnant in high school, As a matter of fact, junior high school. Yeah. And they're like, if I bring this baby into the world, how am I going to graduate? How am I going to be able to get my diploma? You know, a lot of young ladies have dropped out of school because of a pregnancy that they were not expecting. The impact on their lives, financial. We spoke about financial, especially these days. Bringing a baby into this time and era it's not financially easy. You know, back in the day, one of my grandmothers had 10, the other had 15. You know, nowadays you're not seeing anybody saying, "Oh, I can't wait to have 15 children." No, because it's not financially easy. It's very difficult where that's concerned. Some are worried about the effect it may have on their relationship. Some of the men that they may be with don't want children, or some may be in a situation where it can affect. It may be like outside the marriage and things of that magnitude. Some have a fear of being single mothers. And they said, you know what, I'm not going to raise this child. I can't raise this child by myself. I can't do this by myself. So I might as well just have an abortion. And some do it also for health reasons. Some ladies, and we spoke about it earlier, some carrying a child can actually be detrimental to their health. So they consider that as well. So some of the stats I'm going to share now are actually coming from gutmatcher.org. I know Apostle was waiting on the stat person to come through. So in terms of stats, in 2020, there were 930,160 abortions in the United States, which was an 8% increase from 2017. 930,160 abortions, which was an 8% increase from 2017. Similarly, it says that the abortion rate increased from 13.5 abortions per 1,000 women between ages 15 and 44 in 2017 to 14.4 per 1,000 women, which was a 7% increase. Also, it is said in 2022, listen to this, 1 in 5 pregnancies ended in an abortion. So that's 20%. In 2020, 20% of pregnancies ended in abortion. More specifically, it said that the abortion ratio increased from 18.4% in 2017 to 20.6% in 2022, which is a 12% increase. Also, it is said that the increase in abortion was accompanied by a 6% decline in births between 2017 and 2020. Because there were more births than abortions in 2020, these patterns mean that fewer people were getting pregnant, but of those that were getting pregnant, more people were deciding to get an abortion. So now we're looking at what are the drivers. I heard culture being mentioned earlier. Listen, sex has been around forever. Sex has been around forever. Bishop Wolliston just mentioned in the 60s that there was a big push. But if we can be really honest, sex is everywhere, especially right now. It's everywhere. It's our children see it in their cartoons. They see it in their books that they're reading. Most of the songs that we're listening to that are being streamed on radio and everything right now, the two biggest focuses of our songs are sex and money. Sex is a big thing. And so it is. What we realize is that many of our young people are getting wrapped up in sex. They're getting wrapped up in sex. And unfortunately, when they get wrapped up in sex, they don't know really how to deal with the repercussions that come with sex. Because yes, the act of itself is something that, if we want to be transparent, is enjoyable, but there's also consequences that come along with the act. And many of them are not ready to deal with the consequences. And so it is, as Dr. Ben said, one of the things that we see is that abortion is actually being utilized as a contraceptive instead of utilizing other means as well. So I took a deep dive and I really looked from 2017 to 2020 and looked at some of the drivers and some of the reasons why there has been an increase in abortions. One of the biggest drivers is, and Dr. Ben alluded to this earlier, is that some states actually expanded their Medicaid coverage on abortion care. The majority of people who obtain an abortion, it is said, are poor and of low income, which is another thing that we're going to have to talk about. The majority of people that obtain abortions are said to be of poor or of low income. And this increase of Medicaid coverage meant that those that needed to get an abortion now could get it covered. So they had now the access, which Dr. Ben alluded to earlier, to now get the abortion done. Also, Dr. Phil was right. During the Trump-Pence administration, there was a domestic gag rule which slashed the Title 10 or Amen family planning network capacity, which severely reduced the number of contraceptive clients served by the program. This means that many people in some states lost access to low or no-cost contraceptive care. Again, they lost access to contraceptive care. If they don't have access to contraceptive care, guess what's going to happen? They're going to get pregnant. This led to an increase of unintended pregnancies and a greater need for abortion care. Also, it said that local and national abortion funds increased their capacity and helped even more people pay for their abortions between 2017 and 2020. Also, during this time period, 75 provisions to protect abortion rights were enacted. Half of these measures repealed pro-Roe bans and other restrictions. And among the other half, many expanded access by requiring Medicaid or private health plans to cover abortions. So now many of our private, not just Medicaid, but many of the private insurance companies are also covering abortions. And not only that, but not only can they be done by MD, but now nurse practitioners, physician assistants, certified nurse midwives have the ability to provide some abortion services as well. So there is an increase in access, there is an increase in coverage, which is allowing more individuals to now partake of abortions, which has probably led to the increase that we've seen over the last 3 years. Lastly, I'll end with this. From a biblical perspective, what is one of the increases in the level of abortions? I think it's a misunderstanding of time and season. A blatant misunderstanding of time and season. What we must understand is that it is God's will that, you know, children be born. It is God's will that we come together. It is God's will that, you know, our families expand, but it has to be done within the correct time and it has to be done within the correct season. Anytime it's done outside of the correct time and season, and Bishop Wolliston just alluded to it a while ago, we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we become overwhelmed, where we become overmatched, and where we become overtaken. And if we're in a situation where we end up as ladies getting pregnant outside of the correct time and season, you're not at the right place, you're not financially stable, you're not in a stable situation where relationship is concerned. In other words, you're not married, and you have all these factors that are working against you, it's going to cause you to consider all options. So it's going to cause you to consider all options. And unfortunately, abortion is one of those options. But when we truly understand biblical principles and moral order and understand the purpose of time and season, it'll cause us to think, to act, and to move differently. So these are some of the factors that I think that are really contributing to the rise of abortion care, the access, the coverage, and it's really driving the increase that we're seeing in the numbers over the past 3 years, Bishop. God bless you.
Okay, well said, man of God, well said indeed. But before we should hear from Andrew, let me just throw this question out. Is there anyone that's on tonight who have ever seen an actual abortion being done?
No, on video.
On video. Oh, yes. Well, yeah. Even on video, yes.
Yeah.
Why I ask that is because naturally there are several ways. Okay, I mean, you've got like if the child inside the mother's womb is not really developed, then they've got the suction method, where sucked out. Now the thing is, if the child is formed and it's almost time for the child to be delivered, I saw that and it made me cry. They, as it were, I mean, naturally they put the lady under, and it's as if they got sharp instruments to pull that child apart. Legs, arms, head coming out bit by bit. When I saw that, it actually brought tears to my eyes. I know that there's several ways, but when the child has reached a certain stage where it's already formed,
most barbaric.
It is.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, Bishop, one of the things that they've introduced now too is a pill.
Yes.
Pill,
morning after.
Even beyond the morning after, there's actually a pill that will induce the abortion, that will actually bring, that will
down.
Correct. So many ladies are now saying, oh, it's safe, it's easy, I don't have to go through the suction. It's early in my pregnancy. I could just swallow this pill or swallow the pill and boom, it's all over. I could start all over again. That's the mindset that's going on right now.
Aye. Okay, let's hear from Andrew. Andrew, I believe that he's the youngest on the panel, and I'm sure that he has something to say. How say you, young man?
Evan, thanks for the opportunity once again to speak on the panel. I agree with all the panelists. Just to concur with Pastor McKenzie earlier, I was going to speak about media and the desensitization of abortion. There's so many commercials that make it seem like it's just another operation. It's just another thing to do. So you don't have the fear factor of going through abortion anymore when there's commercials that make it seem so easy. As Pastor McKinney said with the pill, if you get it within the first, I believe, 8 weeks or so, you can simply take a pill in the comfort of your home for an hour or two, and you have a little bit of pain medication, and you have ease of flow. So media has been a driving force with music. Children are seeing sex so early, but don't see the consequences of it. So you grow up not understanding the risk of the pregnancy part, but you see the pleasure. The media constantly in cartoons, movies, music videos. So you have an earlier and earlier children, 9, 10, 11, 12, engaging in sexual activity, and puberty with hormones and food is allowing people to become pregnancy age earlier. And so the children, especially young children, aren't understanding in middle school, 12, 13, 14, they have these initiatives to postpone sexual involvement. They have all these little things, but these little children are understanding the consequences, and that they're coming home scared and not knowing what to do, but have access to school resources where they can just bypass a parent. And it's as if it's nothing happened. It's just as if another checkup. And so the media has done a masterful job of downplaying the emotional effect and the long-term effect of what it's going to do to that child. So not to rehash most of the points, but I believe media has been a driving force as to why abortion is so readily available, as well as, ease of access and socioeconomic reasons.
Well, let me ask a general question then, okay? As a Christian, do you think that we have the right to make the decision as to live or die? Do we have that right, even as a Christian?
I don't think so, because we don't create life, Bishop. I mean, who really gives us the right? Again, let's go back to the commandments. Thou shalt not.
Yes, sir.
Thou shalt not. But, not to change subject, Bishop, I'm just wondering if there needs to be a re-education, especially from the Christian perspective, or even from the Christian minds on this matter. It's not popular. It's not something that we readily want to talk about, but we can see the effects of it. I mean, most of the panelists laid it out plain and clear. Silence is complicit. When was the last time we really had teachings on this matter? I'm just wondering if our silence has brought us to this place, because if we don't, who will? Now, I understand the evangelicals' position, and they just want to reverse Roe versus Wade. I'm wondering if that's just for political points. Oh, we did this, so the Republic, and not looking at the bigger picture. Do we need to, as Andrew just said a moment ago, 7th grade, 8th grade, they have access to this kind of material. I mean, what do you expect? You know what I mean? So that's why we are where we are now. And as Pastor McKenzie laid out and give us the stats, going up and up and up. Bishop, we're in a dangerous situation. We're in trouble.
I agree with you, man of God. One of the things I've heard young people saying is this, that if you have an unwanted pregnancy and so forth, you deliver that child, yes, you can give that child up for adoption. But in essence, many of them are saying also that you don't know who's going to raise that child. Sometimes that child ends up, worse than if it was dead, because you don't know who really has that child in the palm of their hands.
Well, let God be the judge of that, Bishop. Let God be the judge of that. Not every one of us were raised by parents. Some were by grandparents, some were by, foster parents. But come on, let God be the judge of that. He gives life, he takes it away. We should never take that position. That's what I'm saying. There has to be a re-education. And, I know we've done away with Sunday school for the most part, but when we get these little babies, the schools are doing their job. The communities are doing their job. And what are we doing? It starts very early. Most of us, when this panel in Sunday school, we can remember what we were taught. Yes. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, or whatever. Train a child in the way that he should go, that when he's old, will not depart from it. It starts so here's the thing, Bishop. If the media is doing their job,
amen.
The books are doing their job, everybody's doing their job. What are we doing? As Andrew mentioned, and I was just thinking, will all these kids, 6th grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, have access to porn and all this stuff? What's causing that? Single family parent households, because mom's too busy, or raising the TV's raising the kids, or now the cell phone or the iPad. I cringe when I see little babies with an iPad. Bishop, I'm cringing. And they are so smart now that they can get into your phone with ease.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
this is where we are.
Amen. Well, going back to the Bible, righteousness shall exalt a nation, but sin is still a reproach to every people. Before we should touch on question number 2, is there anyone else that would like to say something pertaining to question number 1 before we go on to question number 2? Okay, question number 2 is, what should be the Christian perspective on abortion and the reversal of Roe versus Wade ruling? Let's go over to the ladies once again. Dr. Ben, woman of God, how say you?
Amen. Amen. The Christian perspective. And that's my stand. And I stand on that. I am 100% pro-life. I believe life begins. Oh my goodness, when that sperm hits that female gamete and they unite, life begins. And God is the true judge of life. In the terms of Roe versus Wade, here's my point, my thought on it. I believe that they have taken 2 concepts and married them together, and then they put it out there for us. They're saying they took the concept of it's my right to choose one in one hand, and they took the concept of abortion, put them both together to say it's my right to choose abortion. And they're 2 different concepts. Abortion, as far as I understand it, let me be very personal, it's murder. And God is the ultimate judge. And I know I'm sounding harsh and a little judgmental. There are no gray areas with God. God is sin is sin. Wrong is wrong. It's not maybe, we could give a little grace. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And then you let God be the judge. The right to choose. I should have the right to choose the things I put into this body. I should have the right to choose the way this body is cared for. They took that concept and they said, I should have the right to choose an abortion. And that's where I pulled the brakes. They married them together. And I believe a lot of people are not seeing the whole picture, but all they're thinking is, I need the right to be able to choose I don't want this child and I need to get rid of it, and not see, as was said earlier, the consequences of those actions as it stands first before God and then before man.
Mm-hmm.
I agree 100% with Bishop Wolliston. Education is key. We need to re-educate our youth. Start from the youth, because their minds are malleable. Their minds are young and fresh. They will ask questions, but be there. Tell them the truth in a way that they can understand it. I honestly believe at conception, life begins. And if you take that life, it goes against the principles of God. Simply put, thou shalt not kill. Thank you, Bishop.
Amen. Okay, let's hear from, because last time we dealt with question number 1, Lucy and Dr. Ben just agreed with each other. Lucy says, "Oh, I agree."
She's in my head.
I agree. So Lucy, do you agree with Dr. Ben?
Oh, absolutely. As a believer, I'm completely 100% pro-life. My biggest thing is, and we've seen it throughout the years, and to piggyback on what Bishop Wolliston said, sometimes the church sugarcoats things or doesn't want to discuss real life issues. And then the church doesn't do it. So then who does? Then the school takes over, the streets take over. For my kids, when it came to talk about, sex and STDs and all this other stuff, I kept it real with my kids. Because I'm like, either they're going to hear the truth from me, or they're going to hear from their friends who don't know no better, or they're going to hear whatever the school is being told to teach them, or what the government is disseminating to, teach out to children. And I'm like, no, it's my responsibility, as a parent, to raise my children, and educate them in the way that I was raised, with our beliefs and our morals. But I believe that, again, there has to be, as both Dr. Ben and Bishop Wolliston said, there has to be a re-education, and it starts in the church. The church has to get out of this thing of, oh, this is a taboo subject, or simply saying sex is bad, don't do it. There's more to sex than just don't do it. Explain why, teach them first those biblical principles. And then from there, also get real with them, teach them the consequences. It's more than just getting pregnant. It's, there's illnesses, there's STDs. I mean, I have, a friend of mine who, she works in a gynecologist's office, and she's telling me now that, these diseases where they had cures before, they're mutating so quickly that now there is no more cures for them. So there's so many aspects to this, and the church needs to start getting in front of it and stop just doing the whole, just don't do it, we're pro-life, and then it stops there. The church also needs to become that place where there is a place of hope or resolution or solution, or where if a person is confronted with a situation like this, as Dr. Ben, I think you said you dealt with some, and Bishop Wolliston, you also dealt with some of them, that we help them get past that shame barrier, where they have a safe place where they can come and talk to and say, hey, this happened. What can I do to get help? Unfortunately, a lot of these teenagers, I mean, let's keep it real, they'll have sex and so forth, but because of, the way that the church has presented a lot of these things, they then go outside for help, as opposed to coming to the places they should come to for help. But the place that they should come to for help increases the shame barrier. They shame them even more, or they embarrass them, or they turn them away, or they don't give them the help that they need. And we have to change that. Unfortunately, the world is doing more for a lot of the people in these situations than what the church is doing. And that's a problem.
Pastor Lucy, can I ask you real quick? As you mentioned, and I really appreciate you rehearsing that, the re-education or the re-education. Do you think it's easier said than done? Why I'm asking is, not only the pastors that are on the panel, I'm sure on the panel, on the live tonight, there are many Christians or teachers or ministers or what have you. And I'm just wondering if it's, because now I'm sitting here thinking, I need to have a meeting with my staff, with my youth leaders, not even my youth leaders, my Sunday, well, we don't just say Sunday school, we say children's church, my children's church staff, because it's not enough to just hear it and not do anything. And that's what I say many times I like about the Bishop's Corner, is that we're talking about the tough, hard subject, but when we leave the live, are we doing anything about it? So do you think it's easier said than done?
It is, and it's because it's been like this for way too long, for so many years. I mean, I think about even myself, growing up in church, and the things that we were told not to do. I mean, it even affected if we just go down to nitty-gritty, it even affected our relationship, with God as a whole, because now we went from, instead of serving him out of relationship and intimacy, we served him out of fear, because we were taught that he was this, vindictive God, ready to send you straight to hell if you made a mistake. I mean, we preach on redemption of the blood, but then we're constantly putting the blood on trial. When someone has a life experience or makes a mistake or something like that, it's almost like we show no grace, no mercy, the same grace and mercy that we were shown that we didn't deserve. The church doesn't demonstrate that. So yes, it's easier said than done, but it's not impossible. Somebody has to be the trailblazer when it comes to this if we're going to make a difference. But it's about walking the walk and not just, talking about it. We have to demonstrate that, on every aspect, not just on abortion, but on all these life issues. I mean, people even having marital issues are too ashamed to come to, a leader in the church and speak about, their issues. So now we're seeing divorce going up, or infidelities. I mean, there's so many issues that we're seeing. And if you look at deeper statistics, the statistics are higher with Christians than they are with people out in the world. And that is sad. It is sad, but unfortunately, the church has created a lot of that.
Okay, let's hear from Andrew. Andrew, I'm going to ask you question number 2, and also add to it what you want to say to Pastor Pagan.
All right. I would add that to Bishop and to Mrs. Pagan, we have to expand the ministry concept. So most times people are so concerned about the music ministry, stereotypical youth ministry, the older folks or the elder ministry. There's too many capable young people in church who have doctorate degrees, who are nurses, who are APRNs, who are school teachers, who are capable of doing this. The problem is they're not given an avenue where they can feel they can add their stuff into church. Mm-hmm. So if we could create, or if people could start to see that there's other ministries that don't require the microphone on a Sunday, that don't require preaching, but are just as effective, we should be more of a therapist than the therapists out in the world. So the people that have these jobs in the secular can add that into the church, and we would eliminate a whole lot of problems. It's very attainable because most of us are professionals. It's not the one time where most of the parishioners were homemakers or mothers that were, staying home and the dad was a farm worker or a factory worker. We have the gifts in church. We just now need to expand the ministry idea instead of it just being the stereotypical method of doing church. And I believe that would solve a lot of problems. It wouldn't be so taboo. Develop relationships, because there's a gap between the 40s and the 60s, the 80s and the 2000s. But there's enough people in between the 60s and 80s to mentor the 80s and the 2000s where you can apply these new concepts with the elders to create a new avenue that's going to affect change. So that was just what I wanted to add as far as if it's attainable. It's very much attainable, but empower the people who are already serving outside to now be free to have this inside the church. And that would eliminate, because why is someone else teaching us stuff? Most of what we learn is from where you're in school 8 hours a day, and you're on a Sunday morning, half an hour to 45 minutes, and a Bible study for an hour, hour and a half. While everyone is capable of knowing the principles of God, but we're not using these people who are now educated and Christian. Combine the two, develop a ministry in church, and I believe that would eliminate a lot of the misconceptions, the like the little stereotype stuff that people have about sex growing up, and if you jump in the pool or just any type of foolishness, we would be the ones that would come to with questions, not YouTube, not Google, and not Netflix.
Okay, Andrew, question number 2, go ahead. What should be the Christian perspective on abortion?
As a Christian, the Christian perspective should be, and I know it's easier said than done, but this shouldn't be an issue for a Christian. For a Christian, it should be automatically assumed that this is not an option for us. Now, are there Christians who have abortions? Yes. But as a Bible-believing, or as we are Pentecostal, Holy Ghost-filled people, the concept of abortion should never have applied to us in the first place. That should have never been an option. So if you are a believer and you're in the situation, yes, sometimes you are put in a compromising position, but as a believer, abortion is not what you would readily go to. But if you are faced with that uncertainty, seek out an elder. There is no elder. Seek out a young person. There are options for who you can go to, but abortion for a believer should never be an option because we believe in pro-life. So these are more secular people that maybe we need to minister to them and have them come and understand that. Value life, value the opportunity, like Pastor said, for destiny, for purpose. But I believe that as a Christian, the perspective on abortion should be very simple. We believe in pro-life.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Pastor Mackenzie, how say you, sir?
I mean, it has been said very well. In terms of the Christian perspective on abortion, yes. We are all pro-life. Well, let me speak for myself. I'm pro-life. And in terms of that, it should not be an option, as Andrew just said, and Dr. Ben just said, and even Dr. Pagan just said, it should not be an option for the believers. Yes, we know that there are extenuating situations and people are going to say, but what if, and what if this was the reason? What if this is the reason? I'm not going to get into those things. But from a biblical perspective, strictly from a biblical perspective, we are pro-life and we believe that I'm going to utilize this phrase, all lives matter. Pastor Pagan said something earlier that this is not taboo. It's not taboo. We're literally talking about a matter of life and death. So we have to make sure that we address this appropriately. And I love the conversation that we're having tonight in terms of the need for education, educating our young people. I heard Pastor Pagan again talking about the increase of and the mutation of STDs, not just STDs anymore. Now they have STIs. So you have STDs and you have STIs. And these things are very difficult to contain, very difficult to deal with, very difficult to manage. So it's not just a matter of just unwanted pregnancy. There are a lot of different things that can result as a consequence of sex. So what we have to do is do our part to really educate our young people. And I love what Andrew just said. Really empower the people that have the capacity to trailblaze change, so that we can actually reach our young people, so they don't have to turn to other options and seek other sources for their education. We should be the one educating our young people so they know what to do and how to do it, and understand our limitations. Another thing that we need to do as a church is understand our limitations. If you can't handle something, get somebody that can really handle it and really have them, do the teaching aspect so that it can actually be effective. And stop just telling our young people, just to pray about it. Please just stop telling our young people just to pray about it. Please, I'm begging you. After I pray, then what? And stop telling them just don't do it. Just don't do it. Because the more you tell young people not to do something, is the more they're going to want to do it. I'm just going to keep it real with you. The more you tell people not to do it, is the more that they're going to want to do it. What we have to do is really teach them and really have them understand the why. The why is the most important thing. Once I understand the why, once I understand the consequences, then I'll be more cautious about getting myself involved in certain things. So education is key. God bless you.
Pastor Mackenzie, I'll pray about it. But let me ask a question. It's really off the beaten track about whenever a woman is pregnant, okay, who kicks most, boy or the girl? Who kicks most?
Oh Lord, for me it was my daughter. You know, young ladies, women, we tend to be a little bit more emotional, dramatic, all of that. And she started in the womb.
Oh,
She was a larger baby. My son was a little bit more quiet, still is. So I'm starting to learn, I'm like, oh, maybe the way, you know, they move in the womb kind of gives you a little idea of what you're getting ready to birth out.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it was the exact opposite. It was my son. He was a lively stone. I mean, he moved, he tumbled, and he's still like that today.
Okay. Let me ask Pastor Mackenzie. Pastor Mackenzie?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, my goodness.
Now, that's something that you got to pray about.
I'll pray about it. Yes.
Let's go on to question number 2 with Bishop Neville Wolliston. What should be the Christian perspective on abortion and the reversal of the Roe versus Wade ruling? Man of God.
It's very simple for me, Bishop. The Christian perspective should be the biblical perspective. Because aren't we Christ-like? Aren't we Christians? And I do agree that there should be a place of compassion and understanding, and of course, education. And it's funny, I was just thinking, Bishop, that it's funny because the pro-choice folks, they're here. The pro-choice folks, they're here. So whose choice is it? Well, but we'll just leave that for now. But yeah, the Christian perspective should be the biblical perspective, because I'm going back again. Are we a Christian nation? I think the apostle spelled it out. We probably have gone away from the true meaning of Christian. Yeah, and I totally agree. The reversal of Roe versus Wade, that should happen. But then what? You know, after Pastor Mackenzie laid it out real well, the why. And, you know, I have to, again, just take my 30 seconds or 10 seconds and rehash education. Andrew made a good point. But here's the problem, Bishop, as you are a leader, myself, and most leaders here, not everybody wants to serve in the church. We have professionals. It shouldn't have to be the pastor. We can't see everything. We can't create all the programs. We can't do it. So if we have an APRN, if we have nurses, if we have medical doctors, if we have these medical health professionals, why don't you come together and say, you know what, Pastor, Bishop, here's what I'm thinking. I think we can do this. I think we can train our young girls. I think we can, do you mind? And if you're a minister, why not? Because it's helping you to help grow the ministry. So there's a whole lot, but the Christian perspective should be the biblical perspective.
I'm into that. One of the things I found in our churches today is that most of the ministers that are there are really just there for the pulpit. For the pulpit. Everyone seems to be for the pulpit, and that is so true. And yet there's so many other things, as the young man pointed out, that they could indeed be doing. Okay, let's go over to the apostle. Apostle Lucien Rojas, man of God, how say you?
Yes, Bishop. This is a really easy question. It's like a no-brainer. And we give easy answers. Everybody's pro-choice and everybody's yes. Now, the thing about it is that we're looking at it from a Christian perspective, and I get that. The Bible is a book of life. And yes, it's the Christian perspective, but let's look at it from a whole standpoint of secularism or whatever. It is said that 61% of America believe that abortion should be legal, and 37% believe it should not. And while that's an easy answer for us as Christians to say, yes, I'm pro-choice, let's look at what happens when a woman is afraid and lonely and the father is missing in action. And again, our answer is no to abortion. But what about in a situation where there's rape, incest? We could say the easy answers when someone is under pressure, And I'm not saying because we are under pressure we should sin or we're wrong, but how do we deal? How do we deal with these circumstances? And so from a Christian standpoint, yes, but how do we deal with some people that are not probably in the church? Do we tell them they are killers and murderers, or do we try to understand their plight and their dilemma?
Apostle, I know where you're coming from, and I'm with you 100%, but I will just say this. We have to remember, every life is valuable and have value in the eyes of God. And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying, for those who want to hear this, every life has value. Because here's the thing, you mentioned rape, you mentioned incest. I don't think it so matters how we got here. The fact is, we got here and we can serve a purpose. Dr. Ben mentioned, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew you, I called you, ordained you, in regards to Jeremiah. So yeah, and Pastor Mackenzie did talk about the extenuating circumstances of the same thing, rape and so forth. But let's always remember, in the eyes of God, every life is valuable.
And I agree with you also on that every life is valuable. And look, somebody was saying there's a double standard among the evangelical because they just want to ban abortion, and a 50-year precedent, Roe versus Wade, because of the life of an unborn child. And here we are seeing ban semi-automatic, and I'm not trying to go off track here, ban semi-automatic AR-15 that is not used for hunting, that is killing children in classrooms and people in supermarkets and people in the house of worship. If we so pro-life, I'm not saying take away a gun. I'm not saying ban a revolver. I'm not saying ban a handgun, a rifle for hunting. I'm saying an AR-15. How come in Japan, they have 10 deaths for the year in gun relation? In America, we have 45,000. So if you're so pro-life and you want to protect life, why can't you, they can't even ban, they can't even get to raise the age, much more to ban it. You know, so on one hand, we saying, yes, life, 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 life. On the other hand, when the life is born, we saying kill.
Well, you said it very well. It speaks of the hypocrisy, doesn't it?
It speaks of the hypocrisy. Okay, ladies, gentlemen, listen.
I would just like to add to what Apostle Ross said a second ago, with the rape victim having a child and the incest. I think we should do it two parts. We should deal with the trauma that the rape victim goes through, right? They should be able to have some type of resource to help them go through the trauma of being raped, but also allow them to understand to still value the life, because a lot of times they're unable to value the life because of what they went through. So if we're able to deal with the trauma, listen, this was a horrible, horrific experience. We're not taking away from what happened to you, but this child deserves a chance. Sometimes we eliminate, or we don't think about how that woman feels being raped and now have to mother a child that was unwanted by force. So we are able to somehow heal her from the trauma and allow her to see that the destiny and purpose that's in this child deserves a chance to move forward. I think then it'll be easier for her not to have an abortion, because all she's going to do is equate the rape with an unwanted child and not have anything to do with it. She will not be able to see the beauty in the child and the purpose that a child can have. So dealing with the trauma of the rape victim would be a perfect way to allow her to have another option to dissuade her from having an abortion.
But you understand what I'm saying? It's not an easy thing to say, well, it's life and let's just have it. The drama of dealing with that. And I'm not talking about it's hardship, lack of finance. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really, being raped without pregnancy is very traumatic, much more to be pregnant. And so for me, I don't have to carry the child, so I can sit and use my faith and say, and
that's
again,
that's where having therapy, especially Christian therapy,
and professional help, because if we see everything through the eyes of Christianity, and again, I'm for life, so I'm not trying to say make an excuse for that, but I'm saying sometimes we forget the trauma that person is dealing with, and whatever decision they make, I cannot be the one to condemn. That's God has to do that. You know what I mean? But I'm not advocating abortion here in any way, shape, or form. But I'm saying these are real traumatic situations that people deal with. And sometimes on the outside, we could give the easy answer. But being in it, it's a totally different situation.
That's true.
I'm into that. We have only 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left. Okay, what should we take away from tonight's conversation? Okay, Pastor Peg.
All right, we're going to start with me this time. I honestly, from tonight, just very quickly, I think that the church should really stand up and begin to trailblaze in this area, to start, as Andrew said, to start using the resources that we have. We do so much out in the community and forget about actually operating from within those 4 walls out into the community. So yes, this is a touchy subject, but I think with the re-education, with us keeping it real as a church, with us, really dealing with these subjects and not ignoring them, is going to make a big difference. And it really does start with us.
It starts with us. Okay, Apostle Lucien Rojas, what should we take away?
Well, we should take away that it's okay to talk about controversial issue. Well, it's not even controversial, but to talk about it because oftentimes we don't get to talk about it or preach it from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. We don't sometimes not even mention. Mm-hmm. So to talk about this, and you might be surprised to know how many people have dealt with this in one way, shape, or form. Pastor Mackenzie drew the statistics that 20%, 1 in 5 women have an abortion, or somebody knows somebody who had an abortion, whether it's a sister, auntie, a cousin, a mother. So it's a really, really pertinent subject, and we thank God for bringing it to the forefront.
Thank you, sir. Bishop Neville Wolliston.
Very easy, Bishop.
Yes,
sir. Glad my mother was pro-life. Right here.
Okay, Pastor Mackenzie.
What do I take away from tonight? That I take away that these discussions are necessary, that education is needed, and that we need to take time to really teach and understand the why in our churches.
Fantastic. Andrew, what should we take away?
I think that we should also take away that these issues are also issues of the church. It is not just a secular issue. Having this conversation allows us to have transparency. And with transparency, we should have a sense of empathy, and we should be able to be redemptive with who we're dealing with. There are millions, there are thousands of parishioners who are Bible-believing, God-fearing people who are dealing with this. How do we help them get to a sense of atonement? How do we help them to avoid these problems? And if they do have, for some, unforeseen reason as a believer, partake in abortion, how do we have restoration? And how do we educate to not let it happen again? Because a lot of times a person will have an abortion once and they have it again and they have it again. But understand that this conversation is necessary, it's pertinent, and it's applicable to these times.
Thank you, sir. Indeed. Okay, well, she started the conversation and she will end the conversation. Dr. Ben.
Praise the Lord. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great to be here tonight. What I'm taking away is I'm stealing the words of Bishop Wolliston. He said, what are we dealing with? Is it the root or the fruit? He said, not abortion. It's not only the killing of a child, it is the killing of destiny and purpose. We have got to get back to the root cause. Remember doing that root cause analysis to find out where we have gone wrong. And we have got to, using church jargon, get back to the old landmarks where we can be effective. And education is key. Thank you.
Education is key. Well, listen, we want to thank God for the panel tonight. Certainly the conversation indeed was powerful. This is Bishop Scott saying good night from the Bishop's Corner. All being well. Next week, same